Hello and welcome everyone, a new episode of Money Means Business. Last week witnessed a number of economic events, and on top of the list it was the annual meeting of the African Development Bank Group, and they had their annual meeting in the Ritzy Resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, and this is not the first time. This is to say that when it comes to Africa, Egypt returned back to the black continent, to our strategic depth. And a lot of discussions, a lot of sessions, a lot of workshops in the presence of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, a number of ministers, including Minister of Finance Dr. Mohammed Maid, Minister of International Cooperation Dr. Rani al-Mashat, Minister of Planning Dr. Hala Saeed, and of course, the CBE Governor Hassan Abdullah. A number of meetings which were held on the sidelines of the important meetings, and a number of memo of understanding were signed, a number of deals, a number of let's say brainstorming just to come up with the best interest of the African peoples in general. In addition to a very important inauguration which took place by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in El Ain al-Sukhna also last week, a lot. But we are going to start with this report, and we are going to return back with more with my dear guest live here in the studio, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Let me first welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Professor Dr. Said Kholy, former Dean of Faculty of Commerce at Ain Shams University, our economic expert, and of course our Professor of Business Management. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
And let's start immediately with the African Development Bank annual meetings, which were held in the Red Sea Resort of Sharm el-Sheikh under the theme of mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth in Africa. Before going into the details or to the field the bank focused on in this edition of its annual meeting, mobilizing private sector. Before going into any details around the issue, how do you see mobilizing the private sector in Africa?
Of course, government by itself and financing by government from the governmental budget, it is not really a good thing right now. And as President Sisi mentioned in a couple of days ago, we should put hand with hand, you know, public sector and private sector. We should integrate not only Egypt, but integrate Egypt with African nation. And of course, when you have a competition, the quality of our product and service, it will become more and more competitiveness. It results as a benefit for the citizen, whether it's Egyptian citizen or African citizen. And it really opens the opportunity to attract more and more new technology to Egypt and to Africa at the same time.
Yeah.
Remember the wealth of or the natural resources of Africa. It is sold to European and Asian nation and to the States as a raw materials. And now we've been working very hard, instead of importing raw materials, whether from Egypt or from Africa, is to add value to it. And instead of importing raw material, we should import more and more product by adding value to our raw materials.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the last 3-4 years in Egypt, for example, we have a black sand. Now we have added value, and we start to produce a product and export. And of course, this it will help us to bring hard currency to the Egyptian budget again,
and save the hard currency for other, maybe more important things. Sir, when it comes to climate and green growth in Africa, and to have this meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, meaning that the whole world now knew what we achieved in COP27. Because COP27, as we were discussing the issue before being on air, was even nicknamed COP of Africa, taking into consideration that the Black continent is unfortunate that the very developed economies are doing a lot to harm the planet, and Africa is paying the price. How do you see now focusing or building on what we had achieved before in November 2022, tackling this issue in specific, climate and green growth in Africa?
President Sisi, he mentioned very important last year during the final meeting of COP27. He mentioned a very, very important message to the world. COP27, it is an action, not do, but it is do, not say. We've been for the last 26 years, the last 26 COP26, and before that, it is only talking. Now we are in action. Action means what? We have to bring investment, heavily invest from European country, from highly developed country, to finance and to protect the environment in Africa. It's a lot of pollution. Africa is the victim of modernization of our industrial sector and so on, which it's really most of the developed country play a major part for pollution, and the victim for that is African country. And with COP27, the end result is to bring over $100 billion to budget the project for reducing the pollution rate in Africa. And of course, by doing that, we should really focus on green Africa, not black Africa. A green Africa means we have a lot of resources and we have to better utilize or best use our resources in order to enhance the economical development for African nation.
We are building on the loss and damage deal which was agreed upon in COP27, and this is the way we should continue. I mean, to have more mechanisms and to implement them on the ground. It's not only ink on paper. Addressing the event, Egypt's Central Bank Governor Hassan Abdullah expressed hope that the AFDP group meeting will materialize future mechanisms to deal with all these issues. How do you see these mechanisms, or how to implement them on the ground? Is it to have this full coordination or harmony between scientific institutions with private sector, with NGOs, all these partnerships together with the public sector? Which should be the priority?
The priority, as we mentioned several times, especially in this program, if you go back like 7 years ago with this program, we always say you can't clap with one hand, you need two hands to clap. It means you have to build integration between private sector and public sector. We have to build a strong relationship with developed country. Because we don't have the technology, so we export the technology to be operated here in our African nation. So strategic alliance is very important. Integration between public sector and the private sector, it's very important issue for sustainability of our economical system, for to be more, really have a map and competitiveness, world competitiveness. Very important.
Amen to that, sir. Sir, now I can say easily that the West or the big economies learned the lesson. I mean, you would find wildfires in Canada and all Europe, Spain, Italy, you name it. You would find drought in many places like China, for example. You would find even Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, last week urging the IMF to finalize the bailout for Tunisia, because if this is not happening, the dire economic situation there is going to have an influx of migrants to Italy and to Europe, so they are going also to suffer. So they learned that we should cooperate together and to have a win-win situation. If they do not support, then they are going to suffer in a way or another. How do you see this?
We're talking about public policy, we're talking about world integration. It's not only Africa. We should really focus on having alliance between African nation and European and the Asian and so on. Remember, when we talk about pollution, we talk about the environmental change. It is not a specific continent or a specific country. It's a world issue. And we should all work together in order to overcome the pollution issue, the excess of innovation and so on, and really affect developed and underdeveloped countries.
Amen to that. And when we talk about investment in new fields, maybe this is going to take time, but we are in a race against time. How do you see the way now new investors or big investors are really brave enough to invest in the field of renewable energy and green hydrogen?
That's the future, and we started already investing in that future. If you recall, 4 years ago, Egypt considered to be for solar system, for example, for solar energy. It is one of the leading country in the Middle East and in Africa. Wind energy is must. Last year, after COP27, Egyptian government signed an agreement with Belgium government to have the green hydrogen, for example, and that is the future. Green economy is the future. Green industry is the future. Green agriculture is the future. And we should really heavily invest in that kind of technology. And as you recall, a couple of years ago, presidency said we are really should use the fourth industrial revolution in order to overcome any deficit and any development in our economical system. And as you recalled, I will take it from you, integration with research and this kind of thing, it should really be integrated in our educational system, in our research institution and so on. It is not really a side issue. It is a very important issue right now, and we should really focus on that, and that is the future. If we don't follow the trend for the future, the gap between us and other country, it will be very wide.
We are going to return to that, sir, but since we are mentioning, or since you described renewable energy and or green hydrogen as the future, Egypt is prepared to be a regional hub for renewable energy and green hydrogen. And there are a lot of efforts exerted by the state to reach this goal, among the Sustainable Development Goals of Egypt 2030. How do you see this? And many people, by the way, thought that 2030 is just is that far. No, it's very close, and they are just very few years when it comes to the history of a nation.
Remember, we achieved almost like 80% of Egypt Vision 2030. The speed we are going on, I believe President Sisi is not really walking or running, he's flying. And really what we accomplished the last 4 to 6 years ago, it didn't happen for the last 30, 40 years in Egypt. And that is the vision for the leadership. When you have a vision and you work hard in order to achieve your vision, and you will see a lot of development in the future. And as you mentioned, Egypt, it will be, my opinion, it will be the hub for industrial sector in Africa and in the Middle East. It will be a hub for many industry, and we already seen it in reality right now. And when we talk about industry, the cycle time for industry, it doesn't take day or two or months or two. It takes 3 to 5 years in order to see the fruits of industrial development. It takes time. Remember, the industrial sector in Egypt and most of the public sector, it doesn't have really research and development and investing in our technology. We still use technology from the 50 and 60 in our manufacturing system. And when President Sisi came to power, he really substituted this traditional system with fourth industrial revolution system or technology, and we're working very hard. And I recall when he opened recently one of the manufacturing plant, and
the white gold quartz.
Absolutely. It is mentioned a very important issue as a professor for management. He said we are using ERP system in order to manage and this really, it reflects the way we manage our industry and the way we manage our industrial sector.
President Sisi, of course, also attended the African Development Bank meetings in Sharm el-Sheikh, and he addressed the attendees, expressing appreciation to the role played by the bank in addressing development issues in Africa, particularly in light of mounting global economic challenges. And would you please, I'd like to underline this, mounting global economic challenges. Unfortunately, of course, the whole world is suffering, whether by COVID-19 or after that with the Russian-Ukrainian issue. But do you think that Africa, African states in general, are negatively impacted more, or now the challenges we are facing, it's affecting all, whether developed or developing economies?
Remember, the art of management is really to switch or to transform a challenge to opportunity. I believe the Russian-Ukrainian war, it should bring more opportunity for Egypt and for African nation. Remember, the supply chain in most of the developed country it's really affected by the war between Russia and Ukraine and so on. And we should use that as an opportunity to attract more foreign direct investment, of course, to Egypt and for African nation. And we should really focus on what kind of materials we have, and we build industry based on the available material. You don't have to export material from other country and so on. If we have the material, we should really bring new technology, as we saw it a couple of days ago.
This was my coming comment, sir. Integration. The president pointed out that such meetings offer a chance to exchange expertise to face climate change repercussions, adding that drought, for example, had caused $70 billion of losses in Africa. Exchanging expertise here, I think it's one of the key words behind the success of any development goal, whether in Africa or in any other place. But here, how do you see this word, exchanging expertise, as a key word?
We have a lot of expertise here in African nation, but really, when we talk about exchange, we don't have the whole knowledge about the new technology. And by integrating with whether European country or Asian country or even in the States and so on, there is nothing wrong to really share knowledge and share information between African nation and the rest of the world. The game of the world now, it is not really isolated. We should work together in order to solve a huge problem, which is the environmental change, and it really affect Africa as well as
but the intra-African coordination, don't you think now it's of a very big importance? I mean, a must?
It's already, we have really involved in many projects in several African nations. They are using our expertise in agriculture, in irrigation, and in education, and so on. And really, we have a linkage between Egypt now in this period of time more than any other period of time before.
Whether diplomatic relations, whether reviving our historic ties with our brotherly nations of Africa. But I do remember when we assumed the presidency of the African Union in 2019, President Sisi spoke about a lot of initiatives, I beg your pardon, like silencing the guns of, for example, as I cannot achieve development without security, but
Absolutely.
also developing infrastructure, having this dream to have a Cairo-Cape Town railway, for example. Are these only dreams, or it can be implemented on the ground for the best interest of all African peoples?
It's really working on it, and that is a huge project for Chinese government. Is the Silk Road from Cape Town to Cairo to Shanghai to China.
Yeah.
And that is a huge project, and they are working on it. But in order to really expand or encourage the trade between African nations, you need to have means of transportation. The mean of transportation is air transportation from one country in Africa to another country in Africa. It costs a lot. We have the Nile. We can use the Nile as a mean for transportation for all our Nile Basin country. And we can have railway transportation, which is cheaper than air transportation and so on. Remember, when you have a dream and you work on very hard with honest way with African nation, you will be able to achieve it. Not today, but maybe tomorrow, not this year, but next year. But you have to keep up working hard in order to achieve your dream.
Yeah.
Which they always say in management, when you have a will, you will have a drive. And Egypt and many other countries in Africa, they have the will, and of course we'll have the drive to achieve our dreams and our vision and so on.
And we do have the human cadres.
Absolutely.
We do have the experts who can run all these projects in all fields, if you agree with me on that.
Of course, that's one of the issues with the meeting for African Development Bank is to provide financing for this kind of mega project between country inter-Africa nation. Financing is very important, and
Financing. For example, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli addressed one of the main sessions in the African Development Bank's annual meeting, stressing that African continent needs a huge amount of financing, about $2 trillion over the next 10 years to deal with climate change issues and sustainable development goals, as well as $100 million annually for infrastructure projects. How do you see these numbers? I mean, should we feel that pessimistic and, oh, these are huge numbers we cannot achieve, or starting the very first step is going to be the most difficult, but when life goes on, we are going to achieve a lot?
And that's what I really meant. But when you have a will, you will have a drive. And if you start today, in the near future, you can achieve part of your dream and part of your vision. And of course, financing. If you provide really for whether International Monetary Fund or International Bank or African Bank with a good feasibility study for your project or for your dreams, you will be able to get your financing. And also, you have to have a good and strong negotiation team to convince the people in the other side with his lending organization. That is very important.
Sure. Sir, when it comes to the geographic location of Egypt, it's really more than unique. And with this geographic location, we can be the gate to Africa from all over the world. If it's China, if it's the East, we are the gate to Africa. If it is the north or north of the Mediterranean, we are the gate of Africa. Can I consider this as a way to say that we are here to have all the time this win-win situation, not only between us and Africa, but also between the world and Africa at large?
God blessed Egypt by several competitive advantage. One of it is location. Egypt is part of Africa, part of the Arab world, part of Asia. And really, we should really use that to attract foreign direct investment to come and invest in Egypt. And I always say, I see it, and you will see it in the future. Egypt will be a hub for many industrial sector. If you recall, when the Prime Minister of Japan here, he said we are going to build a manufacturing facility to produce cars here in Egypt. That is a mega project. And really,
the
Egypt,
Germans also said so.
Absolutely. And that is, it is the issue of logistics. Logistics is very important when it comes to attracting business. So when you attract foreign direct investment, first of all, you need a location, which we have. We have the Mediterranean Sea, we have the Red Sea, we have the Suez Canal, we have the Nile River, and so on. And all of that we consider it as a competitive advantage. Also, what we have security and safety here in Egypt. If you recall, 10 years ago, we have a lot of problem with safety and security issue. Now it is, Egypt is safe haven for investment. That is another issue. We have infrastructure. If you recall, 10 years ago, we didn't have, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, when we applied for World Cup to be held here in Egypt, we got zero. Now we hosted a huge event in the last 3 years. And recently we hosted COP27. Last week we hosted African Development Bank with all central bank people come to Egypt. And Egypt is really have a lot of competitive advantage, but we have to maximize the use. Let me say the next stage or the next 5 to 10 years, the issue of managing your resource, it is the most important issue. We should really take it in our consideration when we issue our public policy and our economical policy, is to how to manage your resources.
How to manage our resources. Of course, this is one of our top priorities, but also to take into consideration that we do not have time to waste.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not only about managing our resources, but on the long run, but we should start from today if we want to gain or harvest what we have cultivated now. It's after 10 years, even more than that. So the start or the very first step is the most important one. True?
We started already. We started 4 years ago, and we see it in reality, like Black Sand Factory in Kafr Sheikh, like the as you mentioned, the white gold, the quartz, for example, that is raw material. We used to export it to other the rest
I
of the world.
mentioned that, sir, in specific to speak more about the activities which took place on the sidelines of this important meeting. Because when I said starting from today, for example, Egypt assumed the presidency of the steering committee of the new Partnership for Africa Development Agency, and this was something or a deal signed from our side, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat. To the ongoing cooperation to promote equitable climate financing, mobilizing private sector. This was another meeting with Djibouti Minister of Economy and Mashat. Meaning that it's not only on the presidential level or even the head of the government, but also the ministers. Each in his or her specialty, of course, are doing a lot to implement on the ground what we have agreed upon on the ground. Not only memos or signings or deals, and that's it.
That is a reality now. Our government, our leadership is action, is doable. Doable means what? Not talking, but doing. And as we saw the last few years, it is do, not say. Before we used to talk, now we are saying, we are doing, and we start to see it in reality. When we saw it in reality with the huge development in our infrastructure, a huge investment in housing, a huge investment in social system and so on, and that is to improve the quality of life for Egyptian people.
And to invade new markets or to open new horizons for investment and industry, as we mentioned, or as we also discussed before being on air, that we are going to dedicate our last at least 10 minutes for the inauguration of the quartz factory complex in El Ain al-Sukhna. This was another important economic and industrial event which took place on this day. Just 2 days ago, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi went to El Ain al-Sukhna to have this inauguration, and during the ceremony, the President expressed the state's keenness on eliminating any obstacles facing investors in the petroleum sector, encouraging the private sector to grab investment opportunities in this domain. And also, he had this inspection tour in a very, let's say, huge complex, the first integrated industrial project for the production of quartz, or known as white gold. Sir.
That is a huge thing, and we really should be proud to have in Egypt the first manufacturing or the major industrial hub for transforming our raw material to finished product. And remember, with my idea, we have a lot of mineral, and we used to really misuse it. Now, if you go back a couple of years ago, black sand, it was raw materials. We built a huge facility to transform it, add value to it, and have a product out of it. And a couple of days ago, with the opening of this mega project, and considered to be the first in Africa and in the Middle East, and that it will add value to our economical sector. So as I mentioned before, we should manage our minerals. I believe minerals, we have a lot of minerals, we have a lot of natural resources, and we have to maximize the use of it. It is not only black sand or quartz, but we have in Sinai, which I believe that is the promise land for Egypt, if we really encourage more foreign direct investment to invest in exploring and manufacturing our raw materials. Remember, with the agreement with two of Italian company, they brought the state-of-the-art technology in order to maximize the use of our raw material, which is quartz in this case. But we have several and many natural resources available in Sinai, and we should really...
The quartz complex was implemented by the National Service Projects Agency of the Armed Forces, exploiting high-quality ores from the Red Sea Mountains, as you've kindly mentioned, where the purity of quartz reached 99%. This is what I wanted to say because this made me very proud. 99% purity. This means that we do have a real wealth, and we are going to benefit from it.
Absolutely. And also, it is very important to mention when you add value to this kind of materials, it really reduces the unemployment rate. Of course, when we are able to really sell our product and service to the rest of the world, will bring hard currency to our budget, and the exchange rate for Egyptian pound, it will go down and so on, and that is an added value, and we should all be proud of it, and we should really salute the people behind this project, whether His Excellent Mustafa Mabuli and the rest of the minister and so on. Remember, when we have this meeting a couple of days ago, we signed a lot of protocol with government, with agency, and with a lot of manufacturing organization and so on. Of course, a strategic alliance, it is the key issue. The key issue also is to be able to utilize or maximize the use in an effective and efficient way for our natural resources.
And raw materials. And to add to what you have just said, sir, only a few weeks ago, and it was also in Ain al-Sukhna, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated 6 factories of fertilizers. No more, we are not going again to export our phosphate. No, it's fertilizer, to turn it or to manufacture it into fertilizers, then it's going to be exported. But the raw material is ours, and to have our own industrial complexes, this is going to be for our best interest, and particularly these days when it comes to food security, when it comes to the supply chain issue, we are invading or entering all horizons or all markets because we do not have, again, the luxury of wasting time.
That is the key for how to manage. The key of to manage is to eliminate waste, is to best utilize your resources in all different means, whether you do a strategic alliance, selection is very important, and the decision to make certain industry is very important. We have the raw materials, and we build the industry and add value to these raw materials and transform it from raw materials to a component part or a final product.
Also logistics, sir. What I mentioned this because I was really happy when I listened whether to the top executives or to, of course, the president when he was inaugurating those 6 factories. It was very much well studied. I mean, the ports were there, whether El Adibiyah or Sukhna. So the product, if I want to export, it's not going to take more than 5 to 6 minutes. It's 6 kilometers away. I mean, it's very much planned. It's a strategic way of looking to things from a panoramic, integrated, comprehensive view to make it a whole story of success. I mean, not to build something and to forget the other, not to start with a good step and not to be able to continue. Sustainability. Sir, how do you see this? What I'm talking about is this panoramic view of the state to our industrial sector.
What we call it in management is location strategy. And the location is very important. When you finish your product, you have to be able to transport it. And transportation is very important. If you make a location, wrong location decision, the transportation, it will be very high. New Zealand is a very advanced country in technology and so on, but the issue is transportation cost. And that is what I meant in the beginning of this interview. It is simply the location of Egypt is considered to be a major competitive advantage and distinct, and no other country has this kind of advantage. We are close, we are in Africa, we are close to our Arab nation, we are close to Europe, and so on. And that is a key issue when it comes to negotiating to attract foreign direct investment.
Another message which was sent, I think, in all these events or in all these inaugurations, it was really important to say that we are on the ground practically empowering youth. You would find all responsible for all these mega projects youth. Very well qualified, vocational training took place, very well educated, knowing well how to run such big orchestra, if I may call it this way. How do you see this telling the whole world that simply Egypt is a young country filled with youth capable of leading and of running our future?
Let me take it a couple of days ago when the opening of this facility in Sokna and Marsa Alam, 99% of the people working in this facility, they are Egyptian.
Yeah.
And we have really agreement with the Italian partner is to train our people in order to be able to operate the system here in Egypt. Operated in terms of know-how, and they have heavily trained, and when it comes for implementation and turnkey facility, our Egyptian people, they are able to run this facility. I always believe in our youth. Our youth is the driving force for enhancing our economical, whether in industry, whether in agriculture, whether in tourism and so on. It is really the government, when they developed the National Academy for Training, it is very important to...
And doing a good job, in fact.
Absolutely, to train people and educate people and so on. And that is the responsibility of many different parts. Vocational training is very important. Technological institution is very important. And we should really invest heavily in education in order to integrate the industrial application with our curriculum. That is very important issue. Research and development is very important issue in order to really enhance whether agriculture, whether in industry or many other area. We should really focus in integrating
what you're talking about, sir, is another type of location management. I mean, for example, it's education location management. If, for example, I should have faculty for nuclear engineering in Dab'a, to make sure that all those who are going to be graduated from this faculty are going to manage a Dab'a nuclear plant. If I'm going to speak about Tushka, I should have a number of faculty of agriculture to be able to manage this huge land reclamation project and to end with the green Egypt. Is this applicable on the ground, or I'm just dreaming?
It is really what really we should really examine several things in order to come with a program, educational program. What you need and how to integrate between industrial sector, agricultural sector, and educational sector. Of course, there is other faculty or other college with thousands of people graduate and they don't find job. But if you really build a strategy which you integrate industry, what the industrial sector needs, and put these needs to our engineering school, in business school, and so on, come up with program to serve several industry. And we have many industry. We have petroleum industry, we have Zohra, for example, and so on. We should really integrate industrial sector, agriculture sector, and many other sector into our curriculum system. And when people graduate from this school, from this university, they will find a job, and so they will be able to fulfill a job
Yeah.
immediately. Remember, we have a shortage in nursing sector, and most of the nurses graduate for nursing school, for example, or nursing college, they find a job right away. So really, we should balance between the market needs
Market
and
requirements and
industrial, agriculture, and many other area and so on. And that's what we try to do, for example, at Ain Shams University, when we signed a lot of protocol, what's the market need, and you build a program in order to satisfy the market need. So it's market analysis is very important to
serving
come.
the community.
Absolutely.
In fact, Ain Shams University is doing a lot serving the community. It's such a huge educational, cultural, sociological, if I may say so. It's really one of our institutions which we should all be proud of, and of course you are part of this very nice symphony we have, and we are very much delighted all the time, sir, to have you in our episodes. We were very much delighted to have with us Professor Dr. Said Al-Kholy, Professor of Business Management and former Dean of the Faculty of Commerce, Ain Shams University. Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome, anytime.
Well, by this we come to the end of this episode of Money Means Business. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching. We are going to leave you with some of the most important events which took place in the past 7 days and in detail. We are going to meet you same time on Nile TV International next week, inshallah. It's now goodbye.